Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I rise today to talk about what just happened on the floor, which was the passing in the United States Senate of trade promotion authority for the President of the United States and for our great country to be able to get out there and expand markets for our exporters. This is for our farmers and our workers, our service providers. This is a significant change because for the last 8 years, the United States of America has not been engaged in opening up these markets because while other countries have completed these trade agreements, we have not been able to. So this gives us as a country the ability to be able to open up markets. That's a good thing. And it's significant, and it will have an impact on our economy that's positive because exports not only means more jobs, but it means better jobs. So we'll see more jobs that are on average 15 to 18% higher pay, better benefits, and we'll be able to compete more globally. This is really important to get America off the sidelines. There's also a benefit of getting us back involved in trade because it enables America to be able to set some of the rules of trade rather than other countries. And while we have not had this ability to be able to open up new markets, what's happened? Other countries have been completing agreements, shutting us out, our farmers, our workers, our service providers, but also they've been setting the rules of trade. We want to be able to set them because we're a country that believes that we ought to have a rules-based system, that it ought to be fair, that there ought to be the rule of law, and that the standards that we have, which are high standards in terms of getting tariffs down, but also not being able to unfairly send imports into another country, that those are upheld. So this is a positive step. What I'm also really happy about is that after we passed the Trade Promotion Authority for the first time in 8 years, and sending that for signature to the President, which he has indicated he will sign, we then passed legislation with regard to trade adjustment assistance, which is extending benefits to people who are displaced. So that if you have someone in any particular trade agreement who loses a job or a company that's hurt, you have the ability to help them get the worker retraining money they need, get the help they need to be able to get the skills to find a job and to get themselves back on their feet. So trade adjustment assistance is important. But within trade adjustment assistance, there was even something more interesting, which is we included an amendment which Senator Brown and I, my colleague from Ohio, had promoted previously, and this is to help all of our workers all around America because it enables us to be able to have the ability to go after countries that send their products to us unfairly, meaning that they subsidize them, which is not fair under the rules of trade, or that they dump them, meaning they sell them at below their cost, also unfair. So this is a really important amendment. We call it the Leveling the Playing Field Amendment because as we're expanding exports, which we of course should do because that creates more good jobs in my home state of Ohio and around the country, we should also be sure that we are more aggressively enforcing the trade laws that are in place, the international rules and our domestic rules. This amendment that just passed the Senate tonight enables us to do that. So I'm excited about it because it gives us the chance to be able to compete. It gives the steel worker in Ohio who's playing by the rules, doing all the right things, being more efficient, being more productive, companies that are using technology to our advantage to be productive, not to be undercut when other countries dump their products, say their steel product, their tubes, and other products, structural steel, into the United States of America because they want to get market share. We're going to be able to stop that with this amendment because it enables us to be able to not just file lawsuits against these countries, but actually get them resolved more quickly. Right now, my concern is that too often with these trade laws, by the time you bring a case and are successful at it, you've lost so many jobs that in effect, although you get a remedy, which is winning a trade case and getting higher tariffs on that product, it's too late. So this is a really important amendment, the Leveling the Playing Field Amendment. And I want to thank my colleagues for supporting it. I know there were some concerns and questions about it, and we spent the last couple of months talking about it. Tonight it actually passed. I'm told that that legislation is now going to go over to the House and that will be passed in the House. I'm told that Speaker Pelosi has said today that she's going to support that legislation. This is the Trade Adjustment Assistance legislation with the Leveling the Playing Field Amendment as part of it. Finally, I will say, as part of that TAA, there's another really important measure that I appreciate my colleagues supporting. It's one that I offered in committee and have offered over the years in committee, and it's to help workers who were left behind back when it was necessary for the United States government to intervene and help our auto companies. There were some people who weren't helped. This provides a health care tax credit to those individuals who, through no fault of their own, lost health care, lost pensions. This is when their plans went into the PBGC. This includes Delphi workers in my home state of Ohio. There are several thousand of them. It includes some United Steelworkers. It includes some other employees who were left behind when other workers were given their pensions and given their health care. Every year we have fought for this. We have now been able to put in place an extension of the health care tax credit they desperately need. For most of these people, it's to provide them the ability between the age they are now, say in their late 50s, and when they get on Medicare, a critical time for them to be able to have this bridge to be able to provide health care for themselves and for their families. The health care tax credit, again, is part of this broader TAA, Trade Adjustment Assistance legislation that was passed here on the floor of the Senate this afternoon. Again, I thank my colleagues for working with me on this, again, over the past several years, but also over the past several weeks with regard to this specific provision. Again, that will go to the House now, and we're told that will pass the House as it is. In other words, the House will take up this exact bill and pass it, send it to the President for signature. So this is also a really important opportunity for us to reach out to people who are hurting today through no fault of their own and provide them the health care tax credit that they deserve. In the legislation that we passed this afternoon, we also did something else really important that we've never done before, and that's to help protect Israel from discrimination. We included language in the trade bill itself that Senator Cardin and I had championed in the committee, and it's part of the bill, that says that countries that engage in boycotts or sanctions or divestment of Israel in a trade agreement with the United States of America would not be able to get the benefits of trade with us. We think this is incredibly important leverage to help protect Israel from what's unfortunately happening around the world too often now, which is a double standard, telling the state of Israel that somehow you're going to be treated differently than other countries are treated. I think it's part of a larger effort to try to delegitimize the state of Israel, and it's one where the United States ought to stand up. People say, well, why is this being done in the context of trade? Because it works. It's an area where we do have leverage. When I was U.S. Trade Representative, I had the honor to be able to negotiate agreements with various countries, and one was Oman, one was Bahrain, one was Saudi Arabia. In all three cases, we were able to make great progress, in that case on boycotts of Israel, by telling those countries, if you want to do business with the United States and have a free trade agreement with us, then you've got to treat all countries fairly. You've got to follow the MFN, the most favored nation status, which means that you treat countries fairly. You don't discriminate against countries. And initially they would say, no, gosh, politically that's too hard for us. But after discussions and at the United States standing tall with Israel, we were able to succeed in all three cases. Bahrain and Oman with trade agreements, Saudi Arabia with regard to their accession agreement to the World Trade Organization. So I know it works. I've seen it. And again, that's in the legislation that was passed today here on the floor of this Senate. I'm proud of us because we're actually doing some of this work on a bipartisan basis to help our country, to help our workers, to help our service providers, our farmers, but also to ensure that these rules of trade are fair globally. Finally, Mr. President, I will say that we're not done. There is another bill that we were told would be part of this whole package. It's currently being negotiated in conference after this afternoon because we named conferees between the House and Senate. It's the customs bill. And in that legislation, there are some additional provisions that I think are very important that we pass, including one called the Enforce Act. And this is to avoid the situation where a country is told, well, you're dumping product in the United States or you're subsidizing your product in the United States. You can't do that anymore. And instead, they figure out a way to divert that product to another country and still send it to the United States using the same unfair trade practices. We need to be sure that we are putting in place provisions that allow us to stop that diversion as well. That's what the Enforce Act does. That's in the customs bill as one example. There are other important provisions in the customs bill as well, so I would urge my colleagues to work with us to get that conference done as quickly as possible because the House and Senate versions are a little bit different, and be sure that we can come up with a way to resolve those differences and bring that back to the floor as part of this package. The final one in that package is something that's very important to manufacturers in my state. And this is to enable us to bring products in from overseas that are not made anywhere in America under what's called miscellaneous tariff bills. This is something we've not had the opportunity to do in several years because there are concerns about earmarks. I agree with those concerns. We should not have earmarks, whether it's in trade or whether it's in appropriations or elsewhere. We have resolved that issue by not having it be earmarked under the definition we have in the House and Senate, but rather have it go through the International Trade Commission. Have them be the ones that determine whether a particular product fits within a miscellaneous tariff bill or not. This will help in terms of adding employment in America, reducing the cost to consumers, and making our economy more productive, more efficient, adding economic growth. So it's another example of where, once we complete this package, which includes, yes, expanding exports, which was very important. We had to do that today because America's been sitting on the sidelines for too long. We were losing market share for our farmers, our workers, our service providers. We needed to get back in the game and send more products stamped made in America around the world. That creates jobs here. That's good. Second, we needed to be sure that we have a level playing field, that we work on this issue of currency manipulation, which has some unprecedented language, and also these other issues we talked about today with the level the playing field amendment to ensure that products are not being sold here unfairly, and that we do provide workers this trade adjustment assistance. And then finally, that we move forward with this final bill called the Customs Bill to ensure that we can include all these provisions, which are so important, as a package to make sure that, yes, we're expanding exports at the same time, we're letting people know that they're going to get a fair shake. When they work hard and play by the rules here in America, our workers are going to be told, you're in the global marketplace, we're going to watch your back. That's important. It's important to me, it's important to my state, it's important to the people who send us here, who expect us, to set the conditions in place for more exports, but also ensure that that's fairly done. So again, I thank my colleagues for the work that's been done today, and I also urge my colleagues to move quickly, passing trade adjustment assistance in the House and then passing the conference report on the Customs Bill so we can keep this package together and actually give our economy a shot in the arm and give American workers the chance to compete. And if they're given that chance, we've got the best workforce in the world. We will be able not just to compete, but to win the global competition. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield back my time.